Hello, hello. Welcome back for another live stream with me. I'm Executive Coach Toni Collis. Welcome back. We today are talking about what we need to do to get promoted. This is my current series. We're on episode 2 of this. If you've missed the previous one, please go and have a look at the history in either on LinkedIn or YouTube and see the previous one as playlist. Because today I really want to talk about what the things we can do to change the narrative around our promotion. Last time we talked about the promotion trap, that exhausting pattern that happens where we feel like we're overperforming. We're overstimulated, I would actually say. We're not overperforming, but we're also overstimulated. We're overwhelmed. We're overworked. We're doing all the things, but we're still overlooked. You know, being the one who always delivers, who's fixing, who's saving the day, but somehow isn't getting the promotion. Today, I want to go from that. We talked about what that looks like last week. Today, we're going to go to what we need to be doing. So here's what no one tells us earlier on in our career. You don't get promoted for doing more. Busy does not equal success. You get promoted for thinking higher, for thinking differently, for communicating at that higher level. And that starts with the words you use. And today we're going to be really diving in to how not doing different work, but simply communicating the same work in a different way can really make a difference. If you've ever been in a meeting, said something smart, and then 5 minutes later, somebody else rephrased it, and suddenly they sounded strategic and got the kudos and the credit, I want you to know I see you. That's what we're fixing today. So let's do a quick recap before we dive on in. Last time, the session 1 of the Promotion Playbook series, we talked about why hard work does not equal promotion. We just need to let go of that, especially in leadership. Hard work is not what leadership is about. Leadership is about strategy. Leadership is about seeing the bigger picture. Leadership is about making sure the vision is fulfilled. Hard work doesn't do that. Hard work actually means you ignore those things. And so we talked about how being the trusted workhorse, the safe pair of hands, that just makes you indispensable, but it also keeps you invisible. It means that people can't see you at anything other than this place where you're super powerful, super useful. They cannot imagine you being anywhere else in the organization. So you're not promotable. And we talked briefly at the end about the promotion playbook framework, those 6 pillars that we're going to start talking about today. They're going to help you translate performance into good perceptions. The perception then goes into promotion. Today, we're going to talk about the first pillar, your strategic value, because that's the real currency of leadership, the ability to make your ideas, your updates, your insights land as credible and high impact, because your value as a leader is about your strategic input. It is not how busy you are. It's about whether or not you and your team are headed in the right direction. And you could do a small amount of work, but if it's strategically aligned, make your business a lot of money. Being busy doesn't make money. And ultimately, while we live in a capitalist society, the thing that matters is whether or not your business operations are making a financial difference. And as I highlighted last time, yes, that applies to nonprofits, to educational institutions. At the end of the day, they are all run by money. Nonprofits, how every dollar is spent and the impact that that makes really is important. So the strategic value as a leader in a nonprofit is about how well can we spend these dollars. Being busy isn't a good way to spend dollars. In an educational institution, it's much the same thing. I would argue they operate in much the same way, having worked in both. It is about, we've got this finite amount of money. How can we stretch it as far as possible? In the corporate world, it's about bringing those dollars in, but the same tactics apply. It is about finding the tactic that is strategically aligned. So today we are going to be digging into what you need to be doing and what you need to be seen to be doing to show up as that strategic leader that makes you that senior person who's promotable. We're going to talk about how to frame your communication so people hear leadership, not just hearing updates. And we're going to use a simple framework, outcome, process, ask. Outcome, process, ask. We're going to talk about that a lot today. If you've got a pen and paper, take notes. If you've got a keyboard in front of you, take notes. This is definitely one to take notes or bookmark so you can come back to this when you're not in the car anymore. Fair warning, if you're listening in the car with kiddos, I do sometimes swear. I will try not to, but if you're listening live, just watch out for that. just in case. So the goal today is that I want you to walk away knowing how to sound at the next level. That is what I want for you. If you're listening to this, something isn't aligning for you, you're struggling with promotion, that's why you're here. In fact, I would love to hear in the comments, put a thumbs up for me, my love. If you're listening to this and thinking, I want to know why I'm not getting promoted, put a thumbs up for me so I know you can hear me, and if that's why you're here, okay? I want you to know exactly what to do starting Monday morning. In fact, if you are in the US, maybe starting today. It's Friday morning in the US. Let's start today. I want you to show up to every meeting differently for the next week. That's the goal. So let's talk about the word strategic. Honestly, it's overused, but yet incredibly misunderstood. It is one of those words in leadership where it's thrown around, and yet most people don't know what they're saying when they say it. When someone says, you need to be more strategic, what they usually mean is, you need to think at the next level, or we're not seeing in you what we think we need to see. Here's the problem. No one tells you how. How to sound more strategic, how to be more strategic. What does that even mean? What is happening? So when somebody has given you the feedback, you need to be more strategic, what have you done? Typically, I find we tend to throw in buzzwords: alignment, leverage, synergy, ecosystem. You know the ones, buzzword bingo. I've actually done sessions on this before. There's corporate buzzword bingo. It doesn't make you sound clever. It just fills the void, but it is not solving the problem. Being seen as strategic has nothing to do with sounding smart. In fact, I was just working with a lady earlier this week, and she's definitely got the buzzword bingo stuff going on. So when she's come to work with me, she's been trying this for 6 months. It's not doing anything. She's been looked over for promotion for weeks, actually a couple of years, I should say. And she came to me confused, like, what is going on? And I'm like, well, honestly, the buzzwords, they don't mean anything to the people you're talking to. She's actually using the buzzwords that she would use with her team. And the people that she's reporting into are not experts in what she does. She's at that point in an organization where the people above her have never done her job or her team's job. At some point you will get there. If you're not there already, if you're there already, thumbs up. When you are at that level, you have to be so conscious of the lingo you're using. And this applies to job interviews as well. It's really, really important that you know what language to use. The language you use downwards to your team is different from the language you use with your peers, and it's different from the language you use above. How you use language is, as much as anything, your reputation here. And when they say you're not strategic enough, a lot of the time, you are doing all the right things. You're just not using the right language. And that is not using the word alignment, leverage, and synergy and ecosystem. It is not that. So when decision makers are assessing who's ready for that next level, they're not listening for those big words. They're listening for 3 things. I want you to write these down. Number 1, connection to business outcomes. This starts early on. I coach primarily senior leaders, directors, senior directors, VPs, GMs, and above, right? But I would say this starts when you get your first management role. You should immediately be able to justify your work as a business outcome. Are you talking about what matters to the organization, not just your team? Your team cares about whether they're enjoying the work. Your team cares about whether or not this is a project that lights them up. Your team, a lot of the time, is disconnected from the business reality. Do your updates to your peers and your boss show how your work drives revenue, retention, risk reduction, growth? You might be listening to that list and thinking, well, I'm not in sales, or I'm not in marketing, or I'm not in this, I'm not in that. Every single part of an organization should consider at least one of those, many of them more than that: revenue, retention, risk reduction, and growth. If you're not considering some of those, we need to have a talk, because every single bit of an organization ultimately is there to either make more with a fixed resource or make more revenue, right? A product, you might be an engineer. The product is there to make revenue or to drive customer retention, to improve onboarding, to stop you spending so much money on fixing problems once they've been rolled out. How many big corporate disasters have we seen in the last month where an update's been rolled out and it's taken down half of the internet, right? A lot of what matters in an organization is, how do you reduce the risk of that? Are you talking in that language? So that's number one, connection to business outcomes. Item number two they're looking for is clarity of thinking. You might think you have clear thinking, but you've got to be able to communicate that. Can you distill complexity into something that helps others make bigger decisions, bigger, better decisions? Ultimately, if you are at a table with peers who don't know what your business unit does, they need to know what your business unit does enough to know how it impacts how they should be making decisions. Enough to know when it's good to work with you, when it's good to pull back, but they're not experts in what you do or what your team does, and they shouldn't be. Part of what makes a good leader is being able to understand all the different parts of a business and how it all sticks together. So you need to be able to help your peers do that, and you need to do that too. So what we're looking for when we're looking to promote people, so this has been my experience when I've been promoting people, is can that person talk at the level above where they are right now, give updates that means they're going to help their peers make those business informed decisions without their peers having to become experts in the thing that you do, right? Clarity of thinking. We don't reward the person who says the most, we reward the person who brings focus. So that's number two we're looking for, clarity of thinking. The third thing that those leaders are looking for when they're considering you for promotion is your confidence under pressure. And I think this is one that trips a lot of us up, myself included. When things get messy or uncertain, do you hold your ground? Do you speak with calm and clarity, or rush to over-explain? Those are the signals that say she's not just managing work, she's leading it. Put it this way, years ago now, I was in charge of a hiring committee, and we interviewed two internal candidates, one male, one female, but this could have been two men, two women, but one was male, one was female. And what was so striking here is the woman was the one who was well qualified. She had the more senior role of the two of them. And she came in with the attitude, which was so prevalent in her resume, in her cover letter, in her interview technique. She came in with the attitude of, I know this is a stretch. I want you to consider me, but I'm here. And the man came in with, like, you should have given me this 5 years ago. His job title was 2 below hers. And yet his attitude was like, you should have given me this 5 years ago. Like, it's incredible. The confidence of when you speak up with calm clarity, do you rush to over-explain? They signal things such as, she's just not managing here. She's not coping. When you are speaking clearly, it's she's leading. And I just think this is so important in the way we show up. I was working with a client 6 months ago now. Let's call her Shalini. Senior engineering leader. And she'd been told for a couple of years that she wasn't strategic enough. This is something I hear all the time. This lady stuck in my mind because she came to me after 2 years of being told in every single review. We actually went through her performance reviews at this company. Because literally every review said, you're not strategic enough. You're not showing how your strategy comes together. It was always about lack of strategy. We unpacked it. And honestly, what was missing wasn't strategy. And that's really what today's session is about. Because often it isn't strategy that's actually missing. It was how you were framing it. And that was true for Shalini. She wasn't updating her VP ahead of her on progress. She was updating them on things like bug fixes and the sprints that had been delivered and were coming up, how a roadmap was being updated. She never linked to why. Why does the organization care about these bug fixes? Why have you prioritized these over others? Why are these sprints happening now? What is the roadmap impact? She never brought that up, right? And as soon as you change that, and this was true for Shalini, it shifts the impact. She was thinking that way. She was making decisions based on impact. She just wasn't communicating it. So if you've been wondering, how do we actually do this? Let's break it down, right? We're going to be using the framework I use with my clients. Simple to remember: outcome, process, ask. Outcome, process, ask. OPA, right? This is your structure for sounding more senior in every meeting. If you use it enough, if you use it for the whole of next week, every conversation, you will start thinking differently. It's a framework I teach every client that works with me. This is your way to help you come across as that decision maker who's strategically aligned, who's rooted in the right things. So here we go. Let's talk about the first piece. Are you looking at outcome? So outcome, process, ask. The first thing is outcome. When people hear that you're busy, they stop hearing impact. So the first thing to do with this is to let go of the need to point out that you're busy. Now, we have to talk about overwork here. I'm a big believer in pushing back, really big believer. If somebody says, can you do this? And you're overworked, you need a way of pushing back. You need a way of either saying no, or you need a way of saying, I can, but it's going to deprioritize that. Does that align with our requirements right now? Get some clarity on what is a higher priority. Sometimes it's pushing back to make the person realize their ask is a big one. I think so much time, and I do this. There are some things I do that are fast and some things that I do that are slow. And I have ADHD, and it's sometimes I'm surprised when I say to a client, oh, this will only take you 5 minutes. And they're like, no, that's going to take me 2 hours. And I'm like, really? And I remember back to when I was a leader thinking, that shouldn't take them that long. Why is it taking them that long? And then equally, somebody would do something far faster than me, right? So a lot of the time pushing back is about getting the person who's asking the question to really comprehend what they're asking for. Because sometimes they think it's going to take 5 minutes and you're like, no, that's a week's work. That's going to derail everything else we're doing. So you need to find a way to push back. But when we push back with busyness, when we're like, oh, I could, but I'm so overwhelmed, or I've got all these things to do, we make quite a big deal of it. I'm deliberately overdoing it now. But I bet there are times, because I've done this, when you've walked into a room, you're like, oh, I'm so busy. It's so stressful. If you come across that way, they stop listening for impact. So that's the first thing. Before we even get to outcome, the first thing you need to do is stop showing how busy you are, because they'll think she's not coping. This is executive presence. We're kind of jumping ahead to like next week. But executive presence is the right persona, right? And that doesn't mean that you should lie. It doesn't mean that if you are really swamped, you shouldn't tell people. You should. But it's about how you do it. Okay, we're going to come back to that next week. But let's talk about outcome process ask. So step 1, outcome. Always start with the outcome. Get rid of the busy first, then start with the outcome. Most people start with what they did. But great leaders start with why it matters. And that's what I really want you to be doing. So instead of saying we completed the migration last week, try instead, we reduced downtime by 40%, freeing up engineering capacity for 2 new initiatives. You see the difference? One sounds like activity. We completed the migration last week. The other sounds like value, 40%, freeing up 2 initiatives. When you start with the outcome, you instantly shift people's perception of you, from task owner to business thinker. Okay, part 2 is process, outcome process. This is where you briefly show how you achieve the result without drowning people in details. That piece is so important. You're not explaining the technical how. Remember, there comes a point when the people around you do not know what you do and they don't need to. But you are reinforcing your leadership. So you try something like, we achieve that reduction by consolidating environments and adjusting our release pipeline. It's short, it's clear, it's confident. Now, the language you use should be relevant to your peers. So if consolidating environments and pipeline are words that you would use outside your team, don't use them. You need to use the words that they are going to understand. So I think most people understand pipeline, but maybe consolidating environments is technically too niche. So you might want to say we consolidated the technical stack, or, we consolidated the architecture. You want to talk about what have you done? I'm talking from an engineering perspective because that's my jam, but this applies. I work with salespeople, marketing people, HR. The key thing is you're all women in tech. The same thing applies. And one of the reasons I love what I do is because I bring together women in tech from different parts of an organization and help them understand the frustrations that they're seeing internally. Why, when as a marketing leader, they're talking to sales and sales is frustrated, I can then see that and explain to them because I've worked with every piece of the tech organization. But the key thing is finding that language that's clear, it's confident, it shows thought and execution, but not so much that you lose altitude. You're not getting into the weeds. You're not coming down too much. Because then the final piece after an outcome and process is the ask. Every time you give a bit of information, you need to understand what is the next step. Decision, an input, an alignment point. This makes you sound proactive and senior, and it also cuts down the noise. I think so many meetings could be avoided by using an ask more regularly, and the right kind of ask, the right size, the right quantity. How many times have you done an update and then a week later you're like, my boss still doesn't give me an answer to that? Did you make it really clear what you were asking for? So I really want you to think about this. What is it that you can ask for, even if it's just full on alignment? I've told you this. Do you agree? I've told you this. Do you understand? But it might be, I've told you this and I'm going to go on to this next. Does that sound good? I don't want you asking for permission all the time, but kind of getting a check is different from asking for permission. So try something like, I'd like approval to expand the approach across all product lines next quarter. Or if you're feeling brave, take that to the next level, which is more assertive. I'd like approval is sort of there. You're saying, I'm going to do this, but I'd like approval is a bit soft. You can say like, my intention is to, does that sound good to you? Right? You're asking for a check mark, but you're showing I'm planning to do this. Subtle difference, just a little bit more assertive. And I think some of us shy away from that. I certainly did. Another one you could do is, we're ready for executive feedback on which initiative to prioritize next. So that's when you've got something clear where you've reached a point, you've shown the process, and then you're saying, I now need to escalate, right? A clear ask. Ultimately, if you're reporting something in, whether it's to your peers, to above, figure out what is it that you're trying to understand here. It might just be alignment, in which case ask if they're aligned, especially with peers. A lot of time we give updates to peers for information. Maybe your ask is, any concerns, any questions, right? Lead the conversation. You will find that you need fewer meetings or you just move forward faster if you intentionally have outcome, process, ask. You are leading. Okay, here's a couple of different examples. If you're watching live, I want you to listen for the shift in attitude, right? The shift in attitude and also the level we're talking about in terms of the organization. So you might say something like, we launched the new onboarding workflow last week. But you could say, I'm reading from my notes here and I can't read. We cut new user drop-off by 18% last week through a redesigned onboarding flow. Next, I'd like input on which customer segment to optimize next. So there, we cut new user drop-off by 18%. Outcome. Through a redesigned onboarding flow. That's the process. Next, I'd like input. That's your ask. See how much more senior that sounds? Okay, let's try another one. Let me skim through my notes here. Okay, here's another before. The team's being busy resolving open tickets from last quarter. Busy. I don't like that. Okay, instead you could reframe that as, we closed 95% of legacy tickets, restoring full SLA compliance and freeing up capacity for proactive client support next month. Now, this one didn't have an ask, but 95% of legacy tickets, restoring full SLA compliance is your outcome. That's a biggie. Freeing up capacity is an additional outcome for client support next month. Now, there is an implicit ask there. I like explicit asks, but sometimes there is a place for implicit asks. In this case, proactive client support next month, you're basically saying, any concerns about that? This is what's coming, concerns, question mark. It's implicit, it's a lot softer, but it's such a big outcome. And you've got an outcome and process. You've got the 95% of legacy tickets is both an outcome and a process. The real outcome is SLA compliance, but the 95% of legacy tickets is a process that achieve the SLA compliance, if that makes sense. So just have a think about when you talk, and it might just require a little bit more prep. 5 minutes prep for a meeting is golden in terms of how much you get out of a meeting. Okay, let's go for one more. You might say something like, we're halfway through implementing this new model. But you could say, we're 50% through the new data model implementation, which will improve reporting accuracy by 25%. I'm going to bring early insights to next week's leadership sync. Is there anything else you need? Right. So 50% through, just a bit more information, right? It's a bit more precise. And then you're saying which will improve reporting accuracy by 25%. That's a projection, but it's the impact. Early insights next week. What's coming? So it's a different way of making your ask again. But for each one of those, it's about not just saying what you're doing, but how you're driving results. I want you to take a moment and think, what update did you make in the last week where you didn't give an outcome? How would you use outcome, process, ask? What asks do you need to be making? What information do you need to be getting across and why? I'd love you to drop in the comments and tell me what you're going to try doing this coming week. If you find this hard, you are not alone. Most of the women I coach, and I would count myself in this when I was doing this, we need a practice. I do role playing with clients, or we'll go through an update prep and I'll talk to them about how they might do it differently. If you do it enough, it just becomes natural. But as with anything, you've got to practice, practice, practice. So if you want to start leading with impact and being seen that way, you need to stop sounding like somebody who just executes and start being seen as somebody who is an executive. An executive actually doesn't execute very much. She leads the room. She owns the room. She understands why she's in the room. So here's your homework. You are going to go through your meetings for today or Monday. You're going to take 10 minutes. Sit down. You're going to go through your meetings and ask yourself, what updates am I giving? Because you've probably already done that bit. What updates am I giving? What outcome, process, and ask for each update? That's it. And you don't need to like reams of information. I want you to keep it small, 10 minutes. If you have 8 hours of meetings, you might need longer, but it shouldn't be a big overhead to what you're already doing, because I bet you're already prepping somewhat for some of these meetings. Okay, let's talk about some other swaps of language that we can be using, because now you've got structure. Let's talk about the delivery. Even if you have a perfect framework, and outcome, process, ask is a good framework, but there's no such thing as perfect because there's always nuances. But if you don't have the right language, it can still fall flat. Or your tone can undermine your authority, that confidence piece we talked about at the beginning. The truth is, most of us have been conditioned as women to speak in ways that make people feel safe, not strategic. We hedge, we soften, we over-explain. And by the way, I've seen that women judge women so harshly here. Oh, she's difficult to work with. When I actually speak to that person, they're just more assertive. We tend to fill the silence because we're afraid of being misheard or misread. But then we fail to speak up because we're afraid of making a mistake. But the leaders who get heard and trusted, they're using language that's simple, declarative, grounded. They don't speak to prove they're smart. They speak to help others decide what to do. So let's rewire some of those habits. Here are a few phrases to consider swapping out. These are ones I hear all the time. Number one, I think, try instead, I recommend, or based on the data, my view is. Instead of, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but that was one of my favorites. Try, here's another perspective to consider. Instead of, I just wanted to check, again, another one of my favorites. Try instead, dropping the just, you're allowed to check. I want to check. That's it. Instead of we're trying to, swap for we're testing or we're working to achieve. And my favorite, hopefully we can. Goodness me, hopefully. Let's get rid of hopefully. Replace it with our goal is to. Small shifts in your language. I want you to rewind this segment if you're watching the replay and write them down. In fact, I do have a speaking toolkit. I'd forgotten about that when I'd been prepping this session. I have a toolkit for how to speak as a leader, how to use more assertive language, how to use more strategic language. If you would like that, DM me on LinkedIn, the word speak like a leader, the phrase speak like a leader, and I'll drop that over to you. Or you can go to my website. It's on my website too. Just Google for speak like a leader and you'll find it on my website. These can make such a huge difference. They make a point. And when we do that, people are going to listen. One of the other things I see people do is not rushing to fill in the space. And I say that as somebody who speaks fast, apparently, I've been told, who doesn't like quiet. I do jump in a lot of the time, but I know that if I really want to make an impact, I need to pause. And that's what I want you to be doing. Let people catch up, especially if you're like me and your brain is working a million miles a minute. Pause, let people catch up. You don't need to fill in all the silence at work. So next time you're in a meeting and you share an idea, stop over explaining, just stop, pause. It's confidence on display right there. And what I do see is two extremes. And interesting, this comes from confidence. Two extremes I work with: the women who speak all the time, like me, and the women who don't speak at all. What we're trying to do is bring everybody into the middle. And both those two extremes, I think, are caused by a lack of confidence. And certainly my experience of the women I coach, diagnose where you tend to show up. Do you overspeak? Fill the gaps? Do you not speak at all? Do you do both of those two things depending on the situation? Both of those are a low confidence issue. So we want to work on that. We want to get you to the middle ground where you speak because you have something to say. You're not speaking just because, and you're confident that you are having an impact. It's about using simple language that stands with weight, that allows you to be there and be valid. Okay, here are a few credibility phrases you can start using straight away. Again, write these down. What I'm seeing is, it's immediately framing insight, not opinion. Here's what I recommend based on the data. It makes you sound decisive, not defensive. You're recommending, which I always think, if you've been asked to go and evaluate something, don't just evaluate, recommend and explain why. Okay? The bigger risk I see is if we don't act. Instantly elevates the conversation. You're immediately saying risk right there. But only if there's a risk to actually address, of course. And my next one. This is worth doing if it achieves. The if it achieves, you're linking an action, this is worth doing, right, with a strategic outcome if it achieves. And I think that's part of where we tend to misstep. We don't say why something's worth doing. We just say we want to do it. You're showing executive thinking by doing that. This is worth doing if it achieves. What are the things? Link that together. Okay, my final one. Here's what I would suggest is our next step. It removes ambiguity. It's an implicit ask. It's saying, hey, I've got a plan. Do I have a green check to just go on, right? Each of those phrases does something powerful. It positions you as the guide forward, not the doer. I really want you to think about where can you use that kind of language in order to have that impact. Okay, now let's talk about where to take this next. Because this isn't about waiting for your next title. This is about leading today, not waiting for permission. I want you to start practicing it. As I said, the earlier you do this in your career, the better. I think a lot of people come to me when they've worked so hard that they're burning out, they're considering leaving the industry. They might have been out of work for a year and they're thinking, I've got to return because I've got to make some more money, or I'm just not done. But they're not prepared to work as hard as they were. Here's the thing, they're often working that hard to compensate for the fact they've not been strategically viewed. The working hard will get you promoted up to a point, and then you hit this brick wall. So the earlier you figure out how to be more strategic and come across more strategic, the less busy, which is not doing anybody any favors. It's not good for the organization. It's not good for you. It's not good for your team. It's not good for your family. It isn't actually good to be busy. A lot of busy organizations are wasting resources doing things that are just being done when nobody actually knows why they're being done anymore. Strategic thinking says, why are we still doing this? Is it still worth doing? We were doing it 6 months ago. Should we be doing it today? Right? I want you to think about how are you communicating at every single level. It's a muscle you're going to bring to everyday interactions. I actually now use it with friends and family because it just makes me more thoughtful. Why am I bringing this up? I'm a more thoughtful human being because I think this way. It doesn't mean I don't have like casual chats, but it means when I need to, I just always think about the impact we're having, because ultimately everything we do has an impact. So let's make this real. Say you're running a weekly team sync. Instead of giving a laundry list of updates, use outcome, process, and ask, right? even with your team. Educate your team on what you're looking for. So it looks like we've reduced bugs by 15%, which should improve our customer response time. I would like to understand ABC with your ask, right? Even with your team, right? It's quick, it's clear, it instantly positions you as a results-driven leader, and it's instantly saying to your team, I need these kind of updates. You would then use the same language above. You might reduce some of the technical jargon, but it's going to be more focused on the customer response and the impact on the business, right? And then the ask is going to be something like around whether or not you're going to prioritize A or B moving forward. The next thing I want you to think about is one-on-ones with key people, whether it's your boss, another executive, a skip level. Instead of walking through everything you've done, let's just stop doing that, right? Pick the things that really matter, right? So the things that have had an outcome, the things where you've reduced a cost or improved a profit or reduced a risk or got more alignment, those are the things to bring out, right? You need to speak the language of the person you're talking to, not your team's language. Business impact, forward focus, decision points. I want you to pick one meeting, a team update, a one-on-one, a stakeholder review, maybe a board meeting, maybe you're there already. And I want you to prep outcome, process, ask. Outcome, process, ask. Then, at the end of the meeting, I want you to write down, how do people respond? Was the tone change in the conversation? How much faster did my points land? Did I get what I needed? Did I make an ask and did I get clarity from that ask? Right? I think all great executives ask themselves every day, what went well, what didn't go well, what would I do differently next time? 3 great questions every day. All the top leaders I've ever worked with have some form of that. And this is a particular form of that. It's reflecting precisely on a specific situation. You are going to show up differently. You're going to evaluate how it goes. And you're going to see, what would I do differently next time? How did people respond? Did the tone of the conversation shift positively or negatively as a response? Did my points land? Did I get the answer I was after? Okay. If you want more of this, remember I have that Speak Like a Leader cheat sheet. DM me, Speak Like a Leader on LinkedIn, and I will send that over to you. But next week, we are back for session 3. We're going to be talking about visibility and presence next week. We want to move from the invisible to the indispensable. We're going to be talking about how to make sure you are viewed as the person who truly is indispensable. So if you are struggling with this, remember I do have a promotion playbook that explains everything we're going through over this promotion playbook series. DM me playbook and I will send that over to you as well, so you've got a PDF version of everything we're talking about. But remember, outcome, process, ask. That's your framework. Use language that shifts and elevates your credibility. And remember, I want you to start applying this today. Pick one meeting, prep for it, outcome, process, ask, and then evaluate afterwards. Self-awareness is everything. If this has been something that has been powerful for you, drop a heart in the chat. That lets me know that we're hitting the mark here. I would really, really appreciate it. But until next time, remember, you can do this. You're already doing the right work. We just need to position you slightly differently. I will see you same time, same place next week.